They say that scars tell stories. Mine speak a language of silver and shame, a roadmap of every moment I believed I deserved the pain. His scars whisper of ash and rebirth, of a man who died in flames and woke up as something else entirely. We were two broken people working the graveyard shift at a warehouse that smelled like cardboard and forgotten dreams. I hid my scars beneath long sleeves and longer silences. He hid his beneath confidence and carefully practiced smiles. But scars have a way of finding each other in the dark. This is the story of how a werewolf who couldn't bear to be touched fell in love with a phoenix who understood that some burns never heal. This is the story of silver and fire, of two people so convinced they were damaged goods that they almost missed the most beautiful thing that ever happened to them. My name is Lily Ashford. His name is David Chen. And this is the language only we could speak. Act 1, Silver Tongue. The scars started appearing when I was 16. Not all at once. No, they accumulated slowly, methodically, over 7 years of a relationship I didn't know was killing me until I was already half dead. Jacob was his name, my first boyfriend, my first love, my first and only pack alpha. He was 23 when we met. I was 16 and stupid and so desperately hungry for belonging that I didn't see the red flags waving like victory banners. He found me 2 weeks after my first transformation, lost and terrified in the woods behind my school, and he promised me everything: a pack, a family, control, love. What he gave me instead were silver-laced gloves. To help you learn control, he'd said, sliding them onto my hands that first training session. Silver makes werewolves focus. Makes them remember their place. The burns were immediate and excruciating. I screamed. He held my wrists firm. Pain is a teacher, Lily. Your wolf needs to understand consequences. For 7 years, I believed him. Believed that the burns on my hands, my wrists, my arms, my shoulders, anywhere he decided I needed correction, were necessary. Believed that love meant enduring. That submission meant safety. That my pain was proof of his devotion to making me better. The scars accumulated like a ledger of failures. Each one had a story. I transformed without permission. I questioned his authority. I looked at another male pack member. I forgot to cook dinner the way he liked. I smiled too much at a stranger. I existed in a way that displeased him. By the time I was 23, I was more silver scar tissue than skin. I finally left on a Tuesday in March, 3 months before this story really begins. He'd burned me again, this time across my collarbone for the crime of suggesting we attend a pack gathering I'd been invited to. The pain was familiar, almost boring in its predictability. But something in me finally broke that wasn't my skin. I waited until he left for work. Packed a single bag. Walked out of the apartment we'd shared for 5 years and never looked back. I had no pack. No family, they'd disowned me when I chose Jacob over their concerns. No friends, he'd isolated me systematically. No money, he'd controlled every dollar. No plan. Just scars and the clothes on my back and a savage determination to never let anyone touch me again. I ended up in Millbrook, a nothing town 3 states away where nobody knew me and nobody cared. Got a studio apartment in a building that should have been condemned decades ago. Got a job at Riverside Warehouse, night shift, moving boxes and avoiding human contact. Perfect. The other night shift workers learned quickly not to talk to me. I wore long sleeves even in summer. Kept my head down. Spoke in monosyllables when speech was unavoidable. Built walls so high that even I couldn't see over them anymore. For 3 months, I existed in this half-life. Not living, not dead. Just enduring. The scars still burned sometimes, phantom pains that woke me gasping in the middle of the day. My wolf, dormant and depressed, barely stirred anymore. I took suppressants, not silver-based, never silver again, but enough to keep transformations at bay. I told myself I was safe. I told myself I was free. I was lying. David Chen started working at the warehouse on a Friday in June. I noticed him immediately, which irritated me. I'd gotten good at not noticing people. But he was different. Tall, lean, with black hair that fell into his eyes and a smile that seemed both genuine and practiced. He moved with a fluid grace that suggested either dance training or something else entirely. And his hands. God, his hands. Even from across the warehouse floor, I could see the scar tissue covering them like gloves. Burn scars, extensive and old, covering every inch from fingertips to disappearing beneath his sleeves. He caught me staring during the first break. Walked right up to me in the break room where I sat alone in the corner, and said, "I'm David." "You're Lily, right? How do you know my name?" My voice came out harsher than intended. "Name tag." He gestured to my chest, and I instinctively crossed my arms. He noticed, and something flickered in his eyes, understanding, maybe. "Sorry. I'm not great at the whole first day thing. Trying to make friends. Apparently failing. I'm not interested in friends." "Cool. Me neither, actually." He sat down across from me anyway, uninvited. "I just figure if we're both working the graveyard shift in this depressing warehouse, we might as well acknowledge each other's existence. Professional courtesy and all that." I should have left. Should have grabbed my coffee and walked away. But something about him, he smelled wrong. Not bad, just not human. Smoke and cinnamon and something ancient and fierce that made my dormant wolf lift her head for the first time in months. "What are you?" I asked before I could stop myself. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes sharpened. "Depends on who's asking." "What are you?" We stared at each other across the scarred break room table, two supernatural beings pretending to be human, both recognizing the game the other was playing. "Werewolf," I said finally. "Unaffiliated." "Phoenix." He held up his scarred hands. "Obviously." David became my only coworker I tolerated. Not by choice. He just persisted. Every break, he'd sit at my table. Every shift, he'd work near my station. Not invading my space, not pushing, just present. We barely talked at first. Comfortable silences broken only by the sounds of machinery and our own breathing. Slowly, incrementally, I learned things about him. He was 28. Originally from California. Worked various night jobs for the past 3 years. Liked old jazz music and terrible action movies. Drank his coffee black with exactly 2 sugars. Had died once, in the fire that gave him his scars, and been reborn from his own ashes, as phoenixes do. "It's not as cool as it sounds," he said one night, 2 weeks after we'd met. We were on break, sitting on the loading dock, watching the sun threatening to rise. "Rebirth sounds mystical and profound. Really, it's just traumatic. You die. Painfully. You wake up. Confused. And everyone you loved thinks you're dead because you were dead." "How old were you?" 25. "House fire. My family was inside." His voice went flat. "I tried to save them. Got trapped. Died in the flames. Woke up in the ashes 3 days later, alone, while they were burying empty coffins." "Did you tell them?" "No." He flexed his scarred hands. "What would I say? Surprise, I'm a mythological creature you didn't know existed?" They grieved. They moved on. I let them. Seemed kinder than the alternative. I understood that. The isolation. The feeling of being fundamentally separate from everyone who'd once loved you. "What about you?" he asked. "What's your story?" "Nothing worth telling." He looked at my long sleeves, at the way I kept my arms crossed, at the scar I'd missed that morning, the one that peeked out from my collar. "You don't have to tell me." "But Lily? Whatever happened to you, you survived it. That's worth something." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. But survival felt like a technicality when you were already dead inside. Act 2, Comfortable Silence. We fell into a routine, David and I. Work from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Break at 3 a.m., sitting on the loading dock, sharing comfortable silence and occasionally sharing words. He never asked about my scars directly, and I never asked about his family. We existed in the present tense only, two people without pasts, without futures, just these strange night shift hours where the rest of the world didn't exist. But I was starting to notice things. The way he never wore short sleeves, even when the warehouse felt like a sauna. The way he sometimes flinched when someone passed too close. The way his smile, bright and easy, never quite reached his eyes. The way he occasionally zoned out completely, staring at nothing, and I could smell smoke, actual smoke, rising from his skin before he'd snap back. He was performing. Putting on a show. Playing the role of adjusted, well-balanced person. I recognized it because I was doing the same thing. The first time I saw his scars, really saw them, was an accident. Late July, the warehouse's ancient AC finally gave up. The temperature inside climbed to hellish levels. One by one, workers started shedding layers. By 2 a.m., everyone was in tank tops and shorts, management too desperate for productivity to enforce dress code. Everyone except David and me. We suffered in our long sleeves, sweat-soaked and miserable, until finally David laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. This is ridiculous. We're both dying here. I'm fine, I lied. You're literally about to pass out from heat stroke. He looked at me, really looked, and something softened in his face. Lily, I don't care about your scars. Whatever they look like, whoever gave them to you. I promise, I've seen worse. I've been worse. You don't understand. Then help me understand. He pulled his shirt over his head in one fluid motion, and I stopped breathing. The burns covered everything. His entire torso, his arms, his shoulders, his back, all scar tissue. Melted and reformed skin in patterns that looked almost like phoenix feathers if you squinted. Beautiful and terrible and devastating. This is what dying looks like, he said quietly. This is what being reborn looks like. I wake up every morning and see this in the mirror, and I remember that I failed. That they're dead and I'm alive and I carry their death on my skin. I was crying. I didn't realize it until tears hit my hands. Your turn, he said, not unkindly. My hand shook as I rolled up my sleeves. The silver scars glinted dully in the warehouse lights, raised, discolored, covering my arms like grotesque lace. Some were thin lines. Others were burns the size of hands, of mouths, of objects I didn't want to name. David's face didn't change. Didn't show pity or horror or disgust. Just understanding. Silver, he said. Someone used silver on you. For 7 years. Someone you loved? I nodded, unable to speak. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and gently, so gently, ran one scarred finger across a particularly bad burn on my forearm. These don't define you, Lily. They're just marks on skin. The real you is underneath, untouched. I don't know who that is anymore. Then maybe we figure it out together. After that night, something shifted between us. We started talking more. Real talking, not just surface pleasantries. He told me about his childhood, his dreams of being a concert pianist before the fire destroyed his nerve endings. I told him about my teenage years, the desperation that led me to Jacob, the slow erosion of self that happened so gradually I didn't notice until I was gone. Do you still transform? He asked one night. Not if I can help it. The suppressants keep it mostly controlled. Do you want to transform? I thought about it. I don't know. My wolf, she's so quiet now. I think maybe I killed her. Or Jacob did. Either way, she's gone. You can't kill a part of yourself, David said. You can bury it, suppress it, ignore it. But it's always there, waiting. Is that why you still smell like smoke? He smiled sadly. I die every few years. Not in a fire, just cellular death and rebirth. It's what phoenixes do. But I've been suppressing it. Taking medication to extend my lifespan, delay the next cycle. Because I'm terrified. Of dying? Of being reborn. Of waking up changed, without my memories, without being me anymore. The first rebirth, I was lucky, I kept everything. But it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes phoenixes wake up as completely different people. And I'm barely holding on to who I am as it is. I understood that fear intimately. The fear of losing yourself. Of waking up and not recognizing the person in the mirror. We're a mess, I said. Yeah. He bumped his shoulder against mine. But at least we're a mess together. I started looking forward to work. Not for the work itself, moving boxes was still mind-numbing and body-breaking. But for those 3 a.m. breaks. For David's presence. For the way he looked at me like I was a person, not a victim or a project or a problem to be solved. We started spending time outside of work too. Nothing dramatic. Coffee at the 24-hour diner down the street after our shift ended. Walking through the empty park at dawn. Sitting in comfortable silence in his apartment or mine, too tired to sleep, too wired to rest. He never tried to touch me beyond that first time. Never pushed for more than I could give. And slowly, incrementally, I found myself wanting more. I wanted to know what his hair felt like. Wanted to trace the phoenix feather patterns on his skin. Wanted to fall asleep next to someone and not wake up terrified. But wanting and having were different things. Because every time I thought about physical intimacy, my scars would burn, phantom pain, my therapist would later call it, but it felt real enough. Jacob had conditioned me to associate touch with pain, and 7 years of programming didn't dissolve in a few months of comfortable silence. David seemed to understand without me explaining. One night, sitting in his apartment watching some awful martial arts movie, I fell asleep on his couch. I woke up hours later to find he'd covered me with a blanket and was asleep in the chair across the room, too considerate to share the couch uninvited. I cried in his bathroom, silently, overwhelmed by the simple kindness of being given space. When I came out, he was awake, making coffee. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" "For not touching me." He turned, and his expression was so gentle it hurt. "Lily, I'll never touch you without permission. Your body is yours. Your space is yours. I'm just grateful you let me exist in proximity to both." That's when I knew I was falling in love with him. Not because of grand gestures or passionate declarations, but because he understood that sometimes love means staying on your side of the couch. Sometimes love means not pushing. Sometimes love means respecting that broken people need time and space to remember they're allowed to want things. Act 3, Phoenix Tears. The shift in our relationship was gradual, like dawn, so slow you don't notice until suddenly the world is light. We started holding hands. Such a small thing, but monumental for me. His scarred palm against mine, our damaged skin touching without flinching. We'd walk through the park after work, fingers interlaced, both marveling at the simple miracle of physical contact without pain. "Does it hurt?" I asked one morning. "Touching silver?" "Burns like hell," he admitted. "Silver and phoenixes don't mix. Something about our fire being pure, and silver being, I don't know, corrupted? It's old magic I don't understand. But you're touching my scars. Your scars aren't pure silver. They're healed skin that was damaged by silver. Different thing." He lifted my hand, pressed a kiss to one of the worst scars on my wrist. "And even if they were pure silver, I'd still touch you. Some pain is worth it." I started staying over at his apartment more regularly. We'd fall asleep on opposite ends of the couch, wake up somehow closer. He never pushed for more, and I loved him for it even as I wanted more myself. But wanting and being ready were different things. 3 months into whatever we were, I had a nightmare. We'd both fallen asleep on his couch after a particularly exhausting shift. I dreamed of Jacob, of silver gloves, of pain and submission and the feeling of my autonomy being burned away. I woke up screaming, thrashing, my wolf surging forward for the first time in months, panic and rage flooding my system. David was there immediately, but he kept his distance. Lily. You're safe. You're in my apartment. It's just us. You're safe. But I wasn't safe. I could feel my transformation starting, my body betraying me, my control slipping. The suppressants weren't enough. 7 months of dormancy and suddenly my wolf wanted out, wanted to fight, wanted to destroy anything that might hurt us again. Lily, breathe with me. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. I can't, it's happening, I'm going to transform. Okay. That's okay. You can transform. I'm not afraid of your wolf. The apartment, I'll destroy. I don't care about the apartment. He was so calm, so steady. I care about you. If you need to transform, transform. I'll keep you safe. I promise. But I didn't want to transform. Didn't want to lose control. Didn't want to be the thing Jacob had trained me to be, a monster that needed correction. Come back, David said softly. Find something to ground you. 5 things you can see. Couch. Table. Your face. Window. Lamp. 4 things you can touch. Couch cushion. My jeans. The blanket. Your voice. I was shaking, but the transformation was receding. 3 things you can hear. Traffic outside. Your breathing. My heartbeat. 2 things you can smell. Coffee. You. Smoke and cinnamon. 1 thing you can taste. Fear. I was crying now, but the wolf had settled. The panic was fading. I taste fear. You're safe, he repeated. You're here. You're in control. We talked through the rest of the night. I told him everything. Every detail of my relationship with Jacob. Every burn, every manipulation, every moment I'd lost a piece of myself. The way he'd trained me to see my wolf as dangerous, my autonomy as selfishness, my pain as necessary. David listened without interrupting, his face carefully neutral except for his hands, clenched into fists so tight I could see the scar tissue going white. When I finished, as dawn light crept through his windows, he spoke very carefully. I want to find this Jacob person and introduce him to what a phoenix's fire actually feels like. David. I won't. But I want to. God, Lily, what he did to you, that's not love. That's not discipline. That's torture. I know that now. Do you? He looked at me intently. Because you flinch every time I move too fast. You apologize for taking up space. You don't eat in front of me unless I eat first. You've been conditioned to see yourself as less than, and I don't know how to help you unlearn that. You already are helping. Just by being here. By being patient. I don't feel patient. I feel furious. At him, at the world, at myself for not being able to fix this for you. I don't need fixing, I said, surprising myself. I need time. Understanding. Space to figure out who I am without him. Okay. He took a shaky breath. Okay. I can do that. David started researching. He found studies on phoenix tears and their healing properties. Found forums where phoenixes discussed their abilities. Found one obscure mention in a supernatural medical journal. Phoenix tears could neutralize silver toxicity in werewolves. He showed up at my apartment a week after my nightmare, practically vibrating with excitement. I think I can help with your scars. David, we've talked about this. They're healed. They're permanent. What if they're not? He showed me his phone, the article pulled up. Phoenix tears. They can neutralize silver at a molecular level. If there's still silver poisoning in your scar tissue, and there probably is, that's why they still burn sometimes, my tears might be able to heal them. I stared at the article. You want to cry on my scars? I know it sounds weird. It sounds insane. Maybe. But Lily, what if it works? What if I can take away some of that pain? I wanted to say no. Wanted to tell him my scars were mine, my history, not something to be erased. But the truth was, they hurt. All the time. Phantom pains that woke me up. Real pains when the weather changed. Constant reminders of Jacob's ownership. Okay, I whispered. We can try. He sat me down in my bathroom, good lighting, first aid kit nearby even though we probably wouldn't need it. I rolled up my sleeves, exposed the roadmap of silver scars that covered my arms. This might hurt, he warned. The neutralization process. I don't know what it'll feel like. I'm used to pain. You shouldn't have to be. He cried. Actually cried, tears streaming down his face as he thought about something sad, his family, maybe, or his own losses. Each tear that fell on my scars burned for a moment, then cooled, then, nothing. We watched in amazement as the discoloration faded. The raised tissue smoothed. The silver scars, one by one, neutralized and healed until they were just faint white lines against my skin. Not gone. Never gone. But quieter. Softer. Less angry. When he finished with my arms, I was crying too. They don't hurt anymore, I whispered. David, they don't hurt. He smiled through his tears. Good. That's good. Act 4, Burning Together. The physical healing of my scars didn't fix everything, but it changed something fundamental. Without the constant reminder of pain, without the burning that woke me up at night, I started to remember what it felt like to exist in my body without fear. My wolf, dormant for so long, began to stir more regularly. Not in panic, not in rage, but in curiosity. I stopped taking suppressants entirely, with David's support. My first voluntary transformation happened on a Saturday night in September, 4 months after David had started working at the warehouse. We drove out to a state park, far from people, and I let go. The transformation was different this time. Not painful, not forced. Just, natural. My wolf emerged gently, curiously, looking around at the world she'd been locked away from. She was smaller than I remembered. Quieter. But she was mine. David stayed human, sitting on a fallen log, watching me explore. My wolf approached him cautiously, sniffed him thoroughly, then did something unexpected. She laid her head in his lap. He stroked my fur gently. Hello, Lily. All of you this time. My wolf made a content sound. Safe. This person was safe. When I transformed back, naked and exhausted, David was already there with clothes and a blanket and no expectations beyond getting me warm and home. Thank you, I said. For what? For seeing all of me. For not being afraid. I'm not afraid of you, Lily. I'm afraid for you. Afraid you'll never believe you deserve good things. But I'm going to keep trying to prove you wrong. We finally kissed on a Tuesday in October. Nothing dramatic led up to it. We were in his apartment, making dinner together, something we'd started doing on our nights off. He was chopping vegetables, I was stirring sauce, and he made some terrible joke that had me laughing so hard I couldn't breathe. When I finally caught my breath, he was looking at me with such open affection that my chest hurt. What? I asked. You're beautiful when you laugh. I wish you'd do it more often. I'm not beautiful. Don't. He set down the knife, turned to face me fully. Don't finish that sentence with something cruel about yourself. You're beautiful. Scars and all. laugh and all. You. I kissed him. Just leaned in and pressed my lips to his, cutting off whatever he was going to say next. He froze for a moment, then kissed back gently, his scarred hands coming up to cup my face like I was something precious. We pulled apart after a moment, both breathing hard. Was that okay? I asked. I should have asked first. That was more than okay. He was smiling, that real smile I'd only seen a handful of times. That was perfect. We took it slow. Kissing on the couch. Falling asleep together, actually together this time. His arms around me, my head on his chest, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat under my ear. Learning each other's bodies through touch that was gentle, consensual, constantly checking in. Is this okay? Yes. Is this okay? Yes. God, yes. Relearning that touch could be good. That intimacy could be safe. That I was allowed to want things and ask for them and receive them without punishment. 6 months after we met, David's suppression medication started failing. I noticed at first, the way his temperature would spike randomly. The way he'd zone out and his skin would smoke. The way he'd wake up from nightmares saying, "It's time. It's happening." How long? I asked when he finally admitted it. Maybe a week. Maybe a month. The medication only delays it, doesn't stop it. He looked terrified. Lily, when I die, when I'm reborn, I might not remember you. I might not remember me. I might wake up someone completely different. Then I'll help you remember. I took his scarred hands in mine. I'll tell you stories about yourself until they stick. I'll show you photos and play you music and remind you every day who you were. And if you wake up different, if you're not the same David, then I'll get to know the new you. And I'll love him too. You can't promise that. I can. Because I don't just love your memories, David. I love your kindness, your patience, your ridiculous sense of humor. I love the way you make terrible coffee and watch awful movies and cry at animal videos. Those things are you. And even if you forget them for a while, they'll come back. Because that's who you are at your core. He died on a Wednesday morning in November. We were in his apartment. He'd been running a fever for days, his skin almost too hot to touch. I stayed with him, kept him hydrated, held his hand when the pain got bad. I'm scared, he admitted as his body temperature climbed to impossible levels. I know. I'm scared too. But I'm not leaving. Lily. I'm not leaving, David. You stayed with me through my nightmares, my transformations, my healing. I'm staying with you through this. When his body finally burst into flames, I forced myself not to look away. Watched him burn, screaming silently, tears streaming down my face. Watched him turn to ash. Watched the ash settle in the bathtub where we'd prepared for this. And then I waited. 3 days. 3 days of sitting beside a bathtub full of ash, talking to him even though he couldn't hear me. Telling him stories about us. About who he was. About what we meant to each other. On the 3rd day, at dawn, the ash began to glow. Epilogue, new language. He opened his eyes and didn't know me. Not at first. He looked around the bathroom, confused, scared, seeing a strange woman sitting beside him covered in ash and tears. It's okay, I said softly. You're safe. My name is Lily. You're David Chen. You died 3 days ago and now you're reborn. It's okay to be confused. I don't remember. I know. That's normal. But I remember enough for both of us. I held out a towel. Let's get you cleaned up, and then I'll tell you everything. It took weeks for his memories to return. Some came back quickly, his love of music, his coffee preferences, his terrible taste in movies. Others took longer. And some never came back at all. But he learned about himself through my stories. Through photos and journals and the life we'd built together. and slowly, he became David again. Not exactly the same, rebirth had changed him in small ways, made him a little more confident, a little less haunted, but fundamentally, undeniably him. "Tell me again," he'd say, lying in bed beside me. "Tell me how we met." And I would. Every time. The story of two broken people working night shift at a warehouse, recognizing each other's scars, learning that damaged doesn't mean destroyed. 6 months after his rebirth, we opened the Sanctuary, a support center for supernatural beings dealing with trauma, abuse, or identity issues. We offered therapy, safe spaces, community. And something else, paired healing. Phoenix tears for werewolves with silver scarring. Werewolf pack bonds for isolated phoenixes. Different supernaturals learning they could heal together. We hired other survivors to run programs. Built a community of broken people learning that their scars told stories of survival, not shame. That healing wasn't about erasing the past, it was about building a future where the past had less power. David and I got married on a Tuesday, deliberately choosing the day he'd died, reclaiming it as a day of celebration instead of grief. I wore short sleeves for the first time in a decade, my faded scars visible to everyone. He cried during the vows, actual tears that we collected afterward, laughing, just in case someone needed them. We still work night shifts sometimes, for old time's sake. Still take 3 a.m. breaks on loading docks, drinking terrible coffee and sharing comfortable silences. Still trace each other's scars like reading Braille, learning and relearning the language of survival. "What does this one say?" David asks sometimes, running his finger across a faded line on my wrist. "That one says I endured when I thought I couldn't." "And this one?" His hand over his heart, where the phoenix feather burns are most visible. "That one says you died for love and came back for it." Our scars speak a language most people can't read. But we can. We speak fluent in trauma and healing, in pain and hope, in endings and beginnings. We know that scars aren't weaknesses, they're proof of battles fought and survived. They're roadmaps of how far we've come. They say that scars tell stories. Ours tell stories of abuse survived, of identities reclaimed, of two people so convinced they were broken that they almost missed being perfect for each other. They tell stories of silver and fire, of tears that healed and flames that transformed. But mostly, they tell the story of how love doesn't require perfection. It just requires presence. Patience. The willingness to trace someone else's scars and say, "These are part of your story, and I love every chapter." My name is Lily Ashford. His name is David Chen. And this is the language only we needed to speak.